Hello everyone, it's Marina. It's from Say Something Crafty. I'm here to do another tutorial with you. This is a tutorial on how to make a book of shadows. I've had a lot of requests and I'm finally here to show you. So what I'm going to start with is chipboard, and I'm going to be using bookboard for my main covers, and I'm going to be using medium weight chipboard for my extra pieces. Measures 7 by 10 inches and the spine measures 2 by 10 inches, and the two extra pieces that you want to add, you're going to want to make sure that they're the same height and width as your spine. You can make your book any size you want. There's no set size on your book of shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Tyvek to reinforce or to adhere my book together. So I'm just going to measure and cut out. I think I'm doing 10 inches by 2 inches per section, and I'm going to apply them with Aleene's tacky glue. You can use any glue that you like. Like I said, there's no 100% way that either way is better. You can use any type of glue that you like. And if you're comfortable, you can even use double-sided sticky tape if you feel like it. I went ahead and cut out a couple extra pieces just in case I needed them. You can also use paper to adhere your covers together. You do not have to use Tyvek. I just like the Tyvek because it's much stronger. I get my Tyvek from the post office, as you can tell. You can also get your Tyvek online, and you can get it in a solid color like black or just white. I had messed up my measurements here, so I'm cutting it down my bookboard a little bit. And this is actual bookboard that I'm using for the covers, so it's really sturdy and kind of hard to cut through. So I had to use titanium scissors after I set my score marks with the rotary cutter. I'm using Howleen's tacky glue, and I'm going to put them. You can use a paintbrush for this part if you want to. I like to use my finger because I feel like I have better control of where the glue goes. And plus, the Howleen's tacky glue is quite thick. You can also water yours down if you feel more comfortable with that, or use a different type of glue. And I'm using this to put my covers together. So when you do this, you want to make sure it's at least 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch spaced apart. You can make yours that way. When you close and open your book, it's got space and it comes together better. And what I do to one side, I make sure I do to the other side. So I'm gluing down one side, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on, take a piece of Tyvek and put it on the other side as well. And I want to get rid of air bubbles, so I'm going to go ahead and use my bone folder to push out the excess glue and air bubbles. Also, if you know this part and you know what you're doing on this part and you don't need this part of the tutorial, feel free to skip ahead. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply the second spinal piece to the cover. And at this point, it doesn't matter if it's upside down or not because you haven't made the cover at all. You haven't started decorating the cover yet, so. Don't worry about if you get this part backwards. It's forgiving on this part. And I'm going to go ahead and add the third piece. Like I said, make sure there's an 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch space between your boards. And now you have a wraparound cover. So from this part, you're going to take some tissue paper and some Mod Podge. I mix my Mod Podge with a little bit of water to make it less thick, and because I'm going to be using so much glue and layering, I don't want it to be super thick. But I am going to go ahead and add some Aleene's tacky glue to make sure that it's a little bit of a stronger hold. It does not matter what color tissue tape or tissue paper that you use because it's going to be covered up with paint. There have been times when I use black tissue paper, so use what you have. I've actually even seen people use toilet paper. And I crinkle up my tissue paper first, and then I go ahead and just start putting it on there. So put some glue below and then start putting some over the top and kind of try to get a light brush, but make sure that you're able to push the tissue paper around with your glue. You can kind of shape it and get the texture how you want it. Here I crinkled up a strip of tissue paper for a large part of texture. I wasn't sure if I was going to go around with it or if I was just going to have it in one area. I ended up just leaving it in this spot right here. And don't feel bad if it doesn't feel like it's coming together or if it feels like it's weird because it looks completely strange when you're making it. It doesn't even look like it's going to be a journal. It looks like it's going to be like this big mess if it's your first time doing it, and so it can be a little bit intimidating, but it's not. It's very fun, and once you're finished, it turns out beautiful. And this is a technique I haven't tried before, so I'm really happy with how it turned out when I put on an extra piece, because I had an idea in my head that I wanted to stitch through the cover. So here I'm doing the same thing, only I'm doing it on the spine, and I kind of wanted to shape it a little bit like a snake. Make sure you get glue in as many crevices and pieces as you can because you really want this stuff to stay down. And I knew I was going to be doing this with mine, so that's why I added the extra Aleene's tacky glue. And I'm going to go ahead and start applying more tissue paper. And I do believe I add on 2 or more layers in certain areas. I wanted this to have a lot of texture. And you can make yours to your own liking and your own preferences. And after I've put those strips on, I'm going to go ahead and layer on a strip of tissue paper to kind of make it seem like it's more solid and cohesive. And to help hold it in place, of course. Don't feel like you have to get it perfect. If some of your tissue paper goes over the edges, once it's dry, you can just cut it off. And don't feel too bad on this situation if it tears, because you can just layer another piece of tissue paper over it. And that is done, so I'm going to let that dry. And now that it's all dry, I'm going to go ahead and start painting. I've selected a few paints that I want to use, and you can go ahead and use gesso over the top if you want to prime it. If not, you can go ahead and start using your colors. Underneath, I like to put some bright colors because I want them to pop through the texture. So my main color or my base color would be yellow, say it's gold or yellow. And then my top coat, if I'm doing something like really basic, my top coat would be, let's say, brown. Well, I'm going to dry brush it on top so the gold pops through the brown underneath, and it's a lot of layering. And honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do with this because I ran out of brown paint, and I did actually try to make myself some brown paint, but it didn't turn out very well. And so I decided to try something else. And like I said, it ended up being a lot of layering and trial and error for me here, and I guess I didn't have too much error because it came together better than I could have hoped. So I had no idea what I was doing, and I was completely scared that I was gonna ruin it because I didn't have brown paint, and that's what I was used to. And I'm so happy that that brown paint ran out and I couldn't go get any, because it turned into something different, something I haven't had before. So I like to use two colors. If you want a secondary color to pop through underneath, then go ahead and add another color. I'm going to have this dry, and I think I'm going to add, well, I'm going to do some air drying here. I'm not going to film the whole thing though. I do believe, is there a texture paste that I add to this one? No, I think the next color I'm going to dry brush on is going to be black. And I just use some regular apple barrel, is it apple barrel? Yep, black paint. It's matte acrylic paint. And so I put that over the top. So I use both artist paints and acrylic paints. There's no certain paint that you have to use. And I am trying to dry brush most of this. And when I say dry brush, I mean it's not dipped in water. I don't have it completely soaked with paint. And while I was painting this, I completely hated it. I did not like the way it looked at all. I don't mind a black cover, and I liked it. It just wasn't what I was going for. It wasn't the look I wanted. So here I'm kind of freaking out, and I'm like, what can I do to make this better, more interesting, because I didn't like the way it looked. And if I was going for a black cover, it would have been perfect. So now that I have it all dry, I thought I'd let it dry, and I would come back to it and look at it again. And once it was dry, I still felt the very same about it. So I decided I'm going to have to add more to this. I'm going to have to add more paint because I don't like this. And if I have to repaint the whole thing 5 times, that's what I was going to do. So what I ended up doing was I took some metallic purple paint, some metallic folk art acrylic paint, and some regular folk art red. It's called red violet paint, and it's like this really beautiful purple, and I mixed them together. I put a little bit of metallic into the red violet, and it turned out so pretty. And I didn't realize that the black was actually helping this color, because it kind of was opaque and a little bit transparent. So it looked perfect, and it went perfectly with the cover, and it just came together. It's so surprising. It came together so well. And I learned that putting the black on muted the brightness in the purple, because if I would have just put the purple over the top, it would not look the same. So you're learning with me. This was me having a learning experience, and it was a good one. Sometimes I like to add other textures and looks to the journal or cover that I'm working on when I'm painting, and so I'll use some paper towels and kind of dab the cover to where I want more color or less color to come through. So again, I'm just going to do a quick dry. Not going to film the whole thing. And on the other side of the book, all I'm going to do is paint around the edges. You do not have to paint the whole inside, because what you're going to do is you're going to layer on some papers. You're going to mat on some papers for your journal cover, or the inside of your cover. You can use gesso, like I said, to cover up some of the colors on the inside better. I went over it with a thicker layer which work just fine. If you need to do 2 layers or 3 or 4, that works as well. Now that it's all dry, I'm going to take out some Inca Gold, and I have a few colors that I'm going to decide what color I want to use. I have a rust color, gold, I have, malachite I believe it is, and then antique silver, and what I went with was a green. And this green is, what is this green called? This green is called green yellow, and it is an Inca Gold product by Viva Decor. And I get my Inca Gold online at Amazon. And since I dry brushed on the purple and the metallic color, it came through, like the other colors from before came through, and it looked really good. Now I'm just making everything pop out. I want to see the textures more. I want it to be really, really vivid. And with the craft paints, they dry more matte colored, especially if you purchased a matte paint. And so it looked a little dull, and I wanted it to pop more. That is another reason why the Inca Gold comes in handy here. You can also use a gold or metallic type paint in dry brush, or use your finger to rub it on. You didn't have to use Inca Gold. And I'm going to go ahead and go around the edges here with some Inca Gold on the inside. Coming through, like the blue, the gold. There's some darker purples in there, some lighter purples, definitely metallic colors, and it's just so beautiful when it all comes together. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew. I'm using waxed linen thread, and I'm going to sew through the puffy parts that I had made earlier. Now this is the fun part because you can do anything after this. You can do anything to the cover that you want to do. Inside I'm going to go ahead and add my papers, but I think I'm going to add some bookmarks to this journal. I'm getting my measurements before I cut them out, but I decided to mat first, just that way I could do a little bit of I wanted to finish it up a little bit more for you guys so you could see how it looks inside once you mat. And I'm going to do a little bit of decorating with you guys here so that way you guys can maybe get a little bit of ideas of some things that you might want to do. I thought of some things later, like I was thinking I could go ahead and do some embossing, either on the inside or the outside. I think that would add a really, really great feature to the journal or the Book of Shadows once you're making one. There's so many different ideas that I had, and I cannot wait to try them on the next one. If you want to see this journal finished and you have not seen it yet, I will have it linked below so you can check it out. And if you want to see another Book of Shadows that I'm going to be making, I will also have that linked below. It is a dragon grimoire, and that one is already posted to my channel, and I will have a tutorial for that one as well. So I've gone and selected some fibers and some ribbon and sari silk that I wanted to use for bookmarks, and this is how you apply your bookmarks. I'm using the hidden signature spine method, and if you do not know how to do a hidden signature spine, I do have a tutorial for that, which I will also have linked below so you can check that out if you want to know how you make the inside of the spine, or if you want to know how you sew your signatures in without them going through the spine of the book. Now, if you pre-plan this, you can also magnetize the inside. When your book closes, you can magnetize the closure. You would have to put them on now. You would have to put them on before you put on your tissue paper and before you do your painting on the inside. Because remember, on the far right now, on the far right that I'm going to mat, you could put magnets there before you mat it down. And you could just have a magnetic closure. I've decided to do a metal closure, which looks awesome as well because it's one I haven't done before. I've done metal closures, but I haven't done one like this because it's kind of unique. I don't have any locks, so I kind of made my own way to keep the journal closed. And also when you're gluing down, if you decide to do a metal closure or some kind of fastener closure, and your book is like this, you do not have to make it like this, by the way. You can use this method and keep off the extra 2 pieces, and it could just be a regular book. But if you decide to do it this way, you're going to want to make sure you clip the journal cover to the flap once it folds over. Otherwise, it's not going to glue correctly. And I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. For example, it'll fall open like that. So I'm clipping them down. I'm clipping the book closed and keeping it in place. So that way when the glue dries, because I'm going to be using E6000 for the metal, once it dries, it'll be drying how I want it to close. You could also use brads for the closure or screws, depending on how thick your mini screws, depending on how thick your cover is, but I like to use the E6000 because I know it's not going to go anywhere. Such a pretty lock. So I ended up choosing a key to go through and keep the book closed. And I'm picking out some filigrees right now that I want to layer on to a different part of the book. Here you can go ahead and add, you can add more metal to the cover if you want to in the center. You could even do sculpting before you put your tissue paper on top. You could do so many different things. Like I said, embossing on this part would be really fun. There's layering. You can do a little collage with some cheesecloth and some metals. There's so many different possibilities, and all of these things I thought of after I made the journal. And I was just thinking, what else can I do to make this more interesting? And I do end up adding book corners and beads to the spine with some potions or some potion ingredients. And what I'm using here is some alcohol inks, and the colors that I used are lime green, citrus, and purple twilight. And I applied them directly onto the metal because I noticed that the color was popping way more than if I were to rub it on with one of the applique pieces. If I have extra, I do soak it up with those. And of course, my colors were purple and green. I went and took a little brad and also colored that as well. So I'm using a brad to hold them both together, and then I'm going to go ahead and glue them onto the side here. And I decided I didn't like the color of the bronze. I didn't like the color of the bronze for this journal, so I went ahead and added the extra alcohol ink to it. And so there, I think I have pretty much all of it done. I'm going to add some more color to this key here before I tie it on. And I already have some mini potion bottles out that I'm going to use for my decoration. And I'm going to leave this sitting like this, or I believe I turn it to the side so it glues and the glue stays. But I hope this was helpful for you. I hope you found a little bit of inspiration and you guys decided to make your own Book of Shadows. I had so much fun making this, and let me know if you have any questions, and I will be posting the Dragon Grimoire tutorial very soon. Alright, I will see you guys next time. Bye.